Yes, guys, what's going on? Welcome to Master Debaters. We are back for another episode of the Master Debating Show with the best master debaters in the whole wide world. Myself, Jay, and Joe. Make sure you subscribe to their channels as well, Scotty and Marty and Stretford Paddock and all that good stuff. But now we've got past that. Why are we here, I hear you ask? Well, 2 games until Manchester United are back in action. I say 2 games, 2 days until Manchester United are back in action against Spurs on the weekend. And there's question marks. Who will start? Will it be Paul Pogba? Will he be on the bench? Does he deserve to come back in after being out so long? Does it even matter given the fact that the club's been away for 3 months anyway and everyone should start on a clean slate? We're going to find out what the guys think. Now, I don't know what they think, so I don't know if it's going to be one of those typical master debaters where them two are going against each other and they can't agree on anything and we have to do 30 seconds and all that shite, but we'll find out. Lads, how you doing?
Yeah, good, mate. Sort of mixed emotions about football coming back because, yes, I'm down to see United, but we know what's coming around the corner, don't we?
Don't say the R word. Don't say it.
I won't, but yeah. I am looking forward. I know we're going to get to it, but I'm looking forward to seeing Bruno and Pogba together, though. So there's my opinion straight in.
Yeah, we're nearly done now, Joe. If you just say what you want, we'll just wrap it up here.
Well, I'm excited. That's all I can say, really. I can't wait. I'm really excited. 2 days, isn't it? Well, I mean, also we've got 2 matches today to look forward to that can sort of take us through a little bit, that kind of build it back up. I know it's not quite the same, but it's better than Bundesliga, isn't it? Let's be honest.
It is. Yeah, Aston Villa versus Sheffield United is a lot better than Dortmund Bayern, to be fair. It always will be. In regards to this debate that we're going to be having, Paul Pogba. Let's take Paul Pogba out of the equation for a minute. Do you think any player that's been injured for as long as he has deserves to come back in now, given that we've had 3 months out and nobody's been playing?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about deserves. And I think some players, it's not a question of deserve. They're that good that if they're fit, they play. It's that simple. We've had players like that in the past. I'm not saying he's as good as them, but, if Ronaldo was injured when he came back, he'd be straight back in the team. Same with Rooney and players like that. And I think the sort of contradictory points that some people make here, I know you're not making it, but people slag off Pogba and say, he's been out all year, he don't care, he's suspended, he's taking a mick, he's milking this injury and all the rest of it. And then now when he is fit, they say, well, he shouldn't go back in the team. And I'm like, well, that don't even make sense. You even think he's good, if he's fit, then you want him back in the team. And if you don't, then, he's not good enough anyway. So it doesn't make sense for me. He's one of those players that if he is fit, and he should be fit by now, he comes back in the team. And I also think he might even have a bit of an advantage to the fact that, okay, he's coming back from an injury, but no one's played proper football for months anyway. So it's sort of leveled the playing field for him. He's not coming into a team where last week everyone was playing and they've been playing for weeks on end. Everyone's had this gap and he's had the opportunity during that gap to hopefully bring himself up to full fitness, if you can call it that. So for me, it's a bit contradictory. I think if he is fit, he has to go in the team. I mean, this is a player that if he was to leave United, we want 120 million quid for him. That says it all. So, yeah, straight in.
Joe, do you think, given that nobody's been playing football for the last 3 months, that they're all on kind of a clean slate? Or do you think actually him not playing competitive football for that long means he shouldn't be starting?
I see the argument. I definitely see the argument. I personally do think that if it was anyone other than Tottenham or anyone other than like a side that we're really battling for top 4 with, there would be no doubt in my mind throw him straight in. What's the risk? He's one of our best players with all our time off, etc. But I think just specifically because it's Tottenham and specifically because it's Mourinho as well, it's not just, it's not Pochettino's Tottenham, it's Mourinho's Tottenham, and he's got a certain point to prove more than anyone else. I can see an argument for not starting with Pogba. We know a settled team that involves Bruno. We know a settled team that involves that front 3 in the midfield. We don't know a settled team that involves Bruno and Pogba. And as much as I'm personally of the opinion, sort of medium to long term, that you play your best players and they will most of the time make the best sort of results for you or create the best results for you, I can see why, just for this game specifically, you wouldn't risk a new formation, a new tactic that has only been tested out against West Brom and lost, and against an inter-squad friendly where they drew 4-4. Not that I read too much into those games, and I don't really read anything into them other than that's the only experience that they've got together. So personally, I'm not going to say I'd be disappointed if he starts by any means, but if he doesn't, I think it might be the most sensible thing to do, not starting him just for this game.
Some would say then, if Pogba doesn't start, Rashford shouldn't start, right? Or is it because we've got less competition in Rashford positions that we kind of need him to start, whereas we've got more in midfield, so it should enable us to slowly bed Pogba back in?
For me, I think I get what Joe's saying now. I sort of get it. It's a Mourinho side. It's difficult, but because this is such an important game, I know it's the first game back, but this is United lose this game, Spurs win, and they're going to be thinking, right, we're in the driving seat to try and get back into that top four. And for me, for a game of this magnitude, I wouldn't say it's a must-win because we can afford to draw or even lose and still get top four, but it is a vital game against one of our rivals. You want your best players, and I think that. If you're a Spurs player and you're going up against United and they've got Rashford, they've got Bruno, they've got Pogba, you're going to be thinking, and Martial as well, and that's like the sort of the players they've got starting. You're going to be thinking, oh, we're up against it. It sort of puts them on the back foot already. They're already missing Dele Alli, who's actually played really well under Jose Mourinho. I know he's been a bit hot and cold the last couple of seasons, but since Mourinho's come in, he's probably been the biggest success story for Mourinho, is the goals that Dele Alli's been getting, including against United, of course. So I think it just gives us that advantage, and I would like to see Marcus Rashford start as well, because going back to my earlier point, I think for this we should have our strongest team. And yes, okay, it's not ideal because they've had this break or whatever, but they've had games. I know you said about they didn't win the game where we tried this new tactic out, but I don't know how much you can look into that. Andreas Pereira was brilliant in those games. Is he going to be brilliant if you start against Spurs? Probably not. It's just, it's the nature of the beast with some of these friendlies and these sort of training ground games or whatever. So I just want to see United play our strongest team against the team that we need to be beating, really. Or if we do beat, it gives us a massive boost in that top four hunt.
I mean, as I said, I wasn't trying to read too much into the result of those games. I was just using more as an example of the time or lack of time that that Bruno and Pogba have had to play with each other. The difference with the midfield and then Rashford, which was your question about should he not be starting either, is we don't have Bruno, Fred, McTominay, Matic, Pereira, Lingard all available to play at the left wing. We do have those options in midfield. Obviously, there's more positions to fill, but the options at left wing are Dan James, who has, even if you think he's a left wing, has played most of his games at right wing this season because of Rashford playing left wing, or that's it. So, it's not as though there's the same sort of obstacles for him to overcome in terms of personnel. I think Rashford's been our best player this season. That's another thing. Rashford has played 32 games and scored 19 goals this season. Paul Pogba has played, 6 games? So it's not, I don't think it's, if one doesn't play, the other shouldn't play for the same reason. I think that Rashford only missed something like 6 or 7 games as well with his injury, and then of course we've had the 3 months off for him to recover. But Paul Pogba's missed 33 games this season, so there's a big difference there in terms of how fresh they are, the experience they have playing with the rest of this squad. And I know Marcus hasn't played with Bruno, but I just think it doesn't necessarily have to be neither of them or both of them start. I think I can see why Paul Pogba wouldn't come back as quickly and Rashford would. And also, I think this talk of 3 months off, well, isn't everyone just basically at a zero level of freshness? I don't agree with that. I think if a player's been injured for 3 months, let's say it was an injury-related thing, say they've got a really serious hamstring injury that they've got 3 months out, something like Harry Kane had. If you compare that to someone who's been out for 9 months, essentially like Paul Pogba has, let's say they've done the knee or they've broken a bone in their leg or something, you definitely come back less fresh after 9 months than 3. I don't think you're both just at a zero. So I think that, Rashford will presumably be more fresh than Pogba. He's got a lot more experience this season. And I would start Rashford. And again, I'm not saying don't start Pogba, but I won't be sat there thinking, oh, we've missed a trick here if they don't, because we don't have the experience of seeing that team play together.
There's also the thing where you probably don't need to rush it either. Like Jay kind of alluded to, we don't have to win this game to be still in with a shout of achieving our goals. And because it's the first game back, maybe not rushing things. If you go all out, you get a defeat. You probably lose more confidence if you've put all your cards out there and lost on the first day than if you just slowly rebuild it back up. And a lot does depend on just how fit he is, though, doesn't it? How he's looked in training. If he's been smoking the likes of Matic and Fred and McTominay in midfield, then they can't really say, well, he shouldn't be starting. Because there is a little bit of that if Pogba comes in, is it fair on Scott McTominay, on Fred, on Matic, who were playing well before, or shouldn't that matter?
I mean, I don't get this idea. It's not fair on them because none of them were, other than Fred, none of them nailed down a place anyway. I mean, McTominay was injured, fair enough. Matic was on his way out of the club until he got brought back in because of injuries, and then he shone, admittedly. But there was no sort of settled midfield where you say, oh, it's definitely going to be Matic and Fred or McTominay and Fred. It was like a bit of a merry-go-round, and the only sort of constant really was Fred, who I think started practically every game and played nearly enough every minute of every game under Ollie. So I don't know quite where I'd say it's not fair on them. I think that for me, I know I'll keep banging this drum, but this idea of always having two holding midfielders, because, you know, Fred, McTominay and Matic, they're all pretty much holding midfielders. That's what they do. They're not, you might be able to argue that McTominay is a little bit more box to box, but I'm not really sure on that. I think essentially they just sit in front of the defence, don't they? And I just don't think you need that when you've got two world-class midfielders in Pogba and Bruno for the first time in a long time at Manchester United. For me, it just seems like a bit of a madness. Okay, we're just talking about this one game, long term, you'd expect them both to play. But I just think you just got to get them playing together as soon as, and have one holding midfield. And I think that if you've got a midfield of any of those three you've mentioned, Fred, McTominay or Matic, with Bruno and Pogba in front of them, that's as good a midfield as any Premier League team's got.
And Joe, you mentioned that because it's Spurs, it may be more sensible to go out with a little bit more reserved and maybe put Pogba on the bench. To flip that argument on its head, because it's Spurs, shouldn't we be going out with all our best players?
I think the point I'm trying to make isn't that Paul Pogba isn't one of our best players. I think he is, even with Bruno, even with Rashford. I know. I think he is our best player. I think he's Man United's highest quality player that we've got. So it's not a question of whether Paul Pogba is the best player for Man United. I just think the thing we don't know is we haven't seen the training. We talk about, you know, what if he's been amazing in training? Well, if he's been amazing in training, then start him, of course, because he is our best player. But if he hasn't, and if there is a bit of ring rust, and if there is this feeling of, well, we want to get these two playing, yeah, exactly, a bit of ring dust. If he has got a bit of that, but the management just sort of think, well, we want to see our best players play together. Let's just stick him in. That's my worry. But of course, if he's been one of the best players in training and he's been tearing it up like we're suggesting there, then I would play him. But my only worry is that sometimes one thing we've seen, which is sort of not upsetting but a little bit disheartening, is you'll notice it on Twitter, on Reddit, on these sorts of things. When the team that the fans are crying out for plays together, almost always we lose or drop points, and everyone's like, finally, it's Martial, Rashford and thing, and they're like, oh, I've lost. And like, oh, well.
Yeah, I remember that. What was it? Schmidfield and there was Herrera, and we want to see Herrera and Schneiderlin and all these
Depay and so all of these sort of dream. Why aren't they playing this? Because actually, usually, funnily enough, coaches with experience in coaching, and you know, Mike Phelan, who's won European Cups and Premier Leagues, know a bit more than us about it. Did he not win? Was he not? He wasn't the assistant, was he, when we won the?
No, it was Steve McLaren.
What about in 08? It was Carlos Queiroz, wasn't it?
08, yeah, okay. Well, anyway, he's won plenty of Premier Leagues.
And he's got great shorts.
Yeah, exactly. Really good shorts, really good experience. So that's the thing. You do sort of realise these people know more than us, even though we think that sometimes they don't. But if Paul Pogba doesn't start, then I wouldn't be surprised. And back to the point about shouldn't we just try and blow him away because it's Tottenham. I think that would be obviously great. You go over there, you're 2-0 up after 20 minutes. Bruno and Pogba sparking everything. Rashford stuck a couple of goals, and we'd all be happy with that. I just worry about the balance a little bit. And like Jay said, we keep playing this two-man sort of pivot. And not that I think that is necessarily the best way to go, but we are used to playing that. So how do we come out of that system, a system that we've played in all but I think, you know, a handful of games where we've played five at the back this season, a system that we're so used to playing over the last 18 months. And all of a sudden you want to bring in new players, you want to bring in players who are coming back from injury against a difficult side at a difficult ground. I just have my reservations about trying too many new things in one game that is an important game. And you talked before about it's not necessarily a must win. I think it's a must not lose, just in terms of confidence, in terms of where it will set us up. Tottenham will be 1 point behind us if we lose to them. I think we really can't afford to lose that.
Can I just ask this then? Right, you know Pogba's going to play. You know he is. Like at some point in that game, whether he starts or not, he's going to play. So is it better to bring him in when perhaps the tempo of the game's already been set and it's sort of flying and potentially you might even be losing and you're bringing him into that, or is it better to start with your stronger team and then if he is knackered after an hour, then bring him off? Which way round would you think is best?
If it's only a case that he can play 60 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever, I would bring him on rather than start him and have to take him off, because I never like it when you're watching a team and they're taking off their best players. I think the players that usually get subbed, most teams, you sort of know it's probably going to be one of these two and then it's going to be this other bloke. Like, a lot of teams have sort of subs that you kind of can half predict. And if we're winning or if it's a tight game that's 1-1 and you've got a Paul Pogba that is, he's played 60, 70 minutes and he's knackered, can we afford to take him off at that point? I think we've got enough creativity without him that we should be able to. I think we should be able to win without him. Certainly, we should be able to, hang in there and let him come on and save us in the second half if worst comes to worst. I would be worried about having to take Paul Pogba off with 60 minutes gone in a game that we're, let's say we're 2-1 behind, because that's kind of what we saw with Rashford with his injury. We should have been beating Wolves. We weren't. He came on, he got injured. You're risking fatigue. You're risking reintroduction of injuries. I would prefer Paul Pogba to know that he's only going to play 30 minutes or 60 minutes. And unless they know from the testing, they know from the training that he can play 90, then start him and play him. But if there's any doubt, I would err on the side of bringing on a world-class reinforcement than having to risk taking someone off or keeping someone on who's tired.
Right, we're gonna do the 30-second rounds right after this, but we're gonna get your 11s on the preview. So I don't want to know your 11. But what is your midfield then if there's no Pogba in it, Joe?
For the midfield, if there's no Pogba, I think it's pretty simple. McTominay, Fred, Fernandes. Matic has been good in there in lieu of McTominay for the last couple of months. But if you are playing that two-man pivot, which I do expect us to do, there's no need for Matic in there. I don't think he's mobile enough. I don't think he's necessarily got the legs again, like I said. So I would play Fred and McTominay and then Bruno in front of that. Loads of running, loads of energy, and obviously great creativity with Bruno.
Jay, what about you?
Have I got 30 seconds there? Sorry, is this a 30 seconds?
No. This is just what would your midfield be?
Well, my midfield, I mean, it's almost take your pick. I'd probably plump with Fred as my holding midfielder, just because of the amount of games he's played this season. I think he's been one of our best players this season. He's proven a lot of doubters wrong. I was a doubter, and he's proven me wrong. I think he's had a great season. And I'd have Pogba and Fernandes in front of him. And I just think that I get where you're coming from. And listen, if Pogba's not 100%, then he doesn't start. I get that. There's no arguments there. But I'm saying if he is, if he's good to go, then yeah, I want to see him and Bruno. You've seen how Martial has benefited in the brief time that Bruno's been here. I think that the likes of Rashford, Martial, Mason or Dan James, whoever starts as well, will just benefit greatly from having the likes of Pogba and Bruno together, feeding them those through balls, playing those sorts of passes that other players can't play. And I think Spurs will struggle against it. I think Spurs are looking at midfield and think we're up against it. And Mourinho, he has that mindset that, okay, this is a home game for Spurs, but there's no crowd. And he might already be thinking, I'd settle for a draw here. Just, a 0-0 sort of thing. And I think if you take the game to him, I think they might struggle, Spurs. I really do.
Right then, Joe, you got 30 seconds to tell me why Paul Pogba should be reintroduced slowly on the bench. I want to be careful how I worded that.
Yeah.
You don't hate
There's
Pogba.
no doubt that I want him to play like in the next few games, but yeah.
Right. I'll start at 30 seconds. I'm going to put you on the screen on your own. You ready?
Yeah.
Go.
I think for the first time in a very long time, United have got the sort of midfield that can win games without Paul Pogba. Certainly since he arrived, he's been the catalyst for most of the best things we've done in terms of trophies and in terms of performances. But we finally have players in Bruno Fernandes, in a rapidly improving McTominay and Fred that can do that job without him, especially if he's not fully fit. I think keep him on the bench, have him as the best super sub you could possibly imagine in that midfield if things aren't going right. But don't risk him. We've got more players, so we don't need to risk our other players.
Shut up.
Simple.
Cheers. You ready, Jay?
Good to go, mate.
All right, then. 30 seconds on why Paul Pogba must start against Spurs.
We've just spent the last 6 months, whatever it's been, moaning about the fact Paul Pogba's not been playing and how much we need him. And then when he's fit, we're saying, well, should we start him? Of course we should start him. He's one of the best players there is. On his day, he's one of the best players in the world. Him and Bruno together is absolutely mouth-watering. You know, we talk about United being used to playing two holding midfielders, and I get that, but we shouldn't be. You know, we've had two holding midfielders in games against the likes of Bournemouth, Watford, Crystal Palace, Burnley, and lost. We don't need two holding midfielders, especially not when you've got two world-class midfielders like Bruno and like Pogba. We've seen how Martial's benefited from Bruno.
Stop.
Imagine how much he's going to benefit from Pogba as well.
Oh, stop. Shut up. Okay, now.
So that's a bit of Pogba as well.
It was like looking one of the horse racing commentators at the end there. He got it in though in the end. It was 31 seconds, Joe. So you can do what
you're the
want.
worst one, right? You're the worst one for those 30 seconds for going over. So you can't run at anyone. I've seen you take.
Now, I'm great with 30 seconds. I am allegedly. So that's it. I personally think Paul Pogba should start, but I don't care who.
Does that mean I've won then? I've won. Thank you.
No. I don't care who wins this. So make sure you get your votes in up there somewhere. Who made the best argument? What do you think? Get that in the comments below. We've got a preview coming up as well, which we're recording straight after this. Subscribe to Scotty and Marty. Subscribe to Stretford Paddock. Subscribe to AdamMcKola TV. Like, comment, share, all that good stuff. At Joel Smith 93, at RFFH on the old socials. And for now, we're the Master Debaters, and we're out of here.